Welcome to Starbridge Mom. I'm Jessica, and this is a video in the Halloween series. In this video, we'll be talking about the fires of Samhain. Fire plays a prominent role in many ancient practices, and that's especially true for ancient Celtic rituals during Samhain. We're going to cover the Wicker Man, bonfires, and candles in this video. The Wicker Man. The Wicker Man myths and legends are about the use of an effigy made of wood and straw to burn humans alive. The Wicker Man was a Druid tradition that was made scary and used as a political scheme by Julius Caesar. The Romans stated the Wicker Man rituals involved human sacrifice performed by the Celts. Druids, a Celtic tribe in Britain and France, were active in their communities and were upheld by their community, respected and honored. However, Julius Caesar had texts written about the Druids by other Romans, non-Druids, and they told tales of how the Druids performed human sacrifices using the Wicker Man. Caesar aimed to dismantle and demonize the superstitious Druids that used straw and wood to build a human-shaped figure that could burn men and animals alive in order to appease the immortal gods. However, it's argued that this couldn't have been true based on the logic that it isn't practical. Wicker wouldn't be a strong enough container to put men or live animals in, nor would it burn long enough. Once wicker burns, it loses strength and breaks apart. Any living animal or person could break their way out. It was never mentioned by Caesar how the people were put into the Wicker Man, and they were made to stay there. The text never mentioned if they were bound up, drugged, or in any other way made incapacitated and unable to break out of the wicker structure. Archaeologists have explained through their research that there's no evidence to support human sacrifices made by the Druids, at least not through the legend of the Wicker Man. Caesar spent years working his political campaign in Gaul, and he aimed to make the Celtic tribes of Gaul barbaric and frightening. There's evidence of Caesar performing human sacrifices, so as it goes with most that abuse others, they project their own doings and stories on others. Caesar didn't have personal experience with the Druids that we know of, and so he drew conclusions based on gossip and hearsay. Meanwhile, he was performing human sacrifices. Another problem with the idea of sacrifices using the Wicker Man is that the structure is usually depicted as being very large. Wicker loses stability the larger it is. When we consider the technology of the Iron Age, it would have been very challenging to build such a large, stable structure made of wicker and then adding the weight of living beings into it, and it withstanding the weight and the fire is totally unconvincing. The legends of Druids and human sacrifices were still perpetuated into my own childhood. As a small child growing up in the 1980s, I remember one particular October when human sacrifices became all the gossip in my small hometown. I was sitting in the back seat as we drove past the cemetery. My mom was explaining to me that there were Druids making human sacrifices and that they played Dungeons and Dragons and worshiped Satan. She told me with seriousness in her tone to never play D&D and stay away from Druids. The crazy spin to this story is that it's my mom that introduced me to the world of pagans, witches, and Druids when she left our Lutheran faith and started looking for a path that was more nature-based and feminine. It was then, when I was 15, that I stepped into a new way of seeing the world, seeing religion, seeing culture. I went into a Wiccan store for the first time with my mom, and I got my first crystal. And it's been a journey of discovery ever since. Of course, D&D ended up not being so scary by the time I was a young adult. My father's son, when I first met him, told me he played D&D, and my first thought was the story my mom shared. I told him about it, and he laughed and said that it was a game for nerds, and no human sacrifice was necessary. But guess what? The myths about Druids came back around. Here it was, the early 2000s. I moved to Idaho with my now ex-husband, the D&D player, and I remember our first Halloween. He grew up in Boise, and apparently even he had stories he'd heard about druids going out into the forest or along the river on Halloween and doing weird stuff, and that it's best to steer clear. He's not even the superstitious type. It just goes to show the myths that last for eons, and also how things get distorted or turned upside down and not used with the original intent. So then, what were the Wicker Man burnings about? Offerings, not sacrifices. There's a couple purposes of the Wicker Man. One, it's to contain prayers, herbs, petitions to the spirit world, or even food like fruits or vegetables as offerings, perhaps even animal remains too. And this was done to make wishes and set intentions for the coming year. Two, it was a way to divine the future and watch the way the flames burn, the direction of the smoke, so that the druid could determine what the new year would bring. Wicker Man could become part of your Halloween traditions if you're pretty crafty. You can make your own small wicker effigy, fill it with herbs or other things such as a small bit of food from the harvest, then write down your intention you want, say a prayer or wish that you may have, and then burn it. You could also do this by using a copper bowl or a small fire-safe cauldron. Bonfires. During Samhain, all fires were to be put out. So in the community, everybody put out their fires in their homes and any fires around the town. Then a great blazing bonfire would be started for the community. This was sometimes called the bonfire, which is where we get the word bonfire from. This is because the remains of livestock would be thrown into the fire. In Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, among other places, these fires were built on the highest hilltops. These great bonfires were lit to symbolize the sun, ward off bad luck and evil spirits, as well as to welcome in the coming winter without fear of the darkness and freezing cold it brings. This fire is seen as a renewal of life, and also when life retreats back into the earth due to the changing season. It's when we return more into our psyche and into the stillness, and we're more introspective. It's a time of completion and contemplation. Since every home and every bit of light would be extinguished before the bonfire was lit, each family would go to the bonfire. They'd light a torch and carry that light into their home. This light from the great bonfire would also act as a warm invitation for company, but not of the living incarnate type of company. It beckoned home the ancestors to the cozy hearth of each family for the night, and the light from the great bonfire would protect their homes from evil or mischievous spirits looking to do harm to the living, to livestock, or their crops. It was also known that if the fire wasn't tended to and went out, that it bring bad luck to the home and family. In some places, the only way to undo the bad luck caused by a fire going out on Samhain was to bring fire from a priest home into your home to bless and protect your home again. These huge bonfires were used to burn effigies too. For example, Scottish Halloween tradition includes burning the witch. Men would dress in their formal Highland attire. The Samhain bonfire would be roaring and in full effect when they toss in the effigy of a hag-looking witch, and everyone would cheer and dance as they watched the effigy disintegrate. Burning effigies dates back past Scotland, past the Druids, and into ancient Babylonian times. Throughout the Celtic tribes, effigies would be made to symbolize anything that was deemed harmful, evil, or anything that caused bad luck to the family in the prior 12 months. These effigies would be burned in the bonfire. This was a way to cleanse the bad energy by fire. When the effigy was destroyed, so was the energy that may have caused any stress to the family. In northern Wales, people once believed that you could write the names of each member of the family on white stones. They'd throw the stones into bonfire, and by morning, on November 1st, the stones were retrieved from the ashes, and anyone whose name was missing or a stone was missing would die in the coming year. Later in the Middle Ages of Europe and the beginning days of early America, it was said that a community could identify a witch's home by the smoke rising from their chimney. The morning after Samhain, people would climb to the tallest hill and overlook their town. It was said that the smoke from a witch's home would travel against the wind instead of with it. It was a superstitious belief, an old wives' tale. If you've watched the movie Hocus Pocus, this is a way that the Binks children discover where the witches live just outside their town. The lore of using fire to keep malevolent spirits away became custom in other places around the world. In Brittany, a historic region of France, had a lot of Celtic heritage, and they too would use fire through the use of a stone lighthouse that was called Lighthouse of the Dead. They kept them lit throughout the night. In Mexico, men of the villages went house to house singing songs to the dead, and they'd light the way with lanterns. This served as protection over the homes of the villages and warded off bad spirits while welcoming the ancestors back home. Candle magic. Candles also play a superstitious role on Halloween. Candle magic is a very old form of natural magic, and Halloween comes with all kinds of lore about candles. Candle magic teaches that one should always burn new candles at Halloween, and to never burn candles you used at Halloween during any other time of year. If you don't follow this rule, you're likely to have bad luck, or perhaps strange happenings will occur. If you want to have good luck, burn orange and black candles all night until sunrise on Samhain. Throughout places across the world, people have lore and stories about how to use candles and how to not use them on Halloween. It's said that no one should burn a candle and look at themselves in the mirror. If you should do this, you'll see the reflection of the devil, especially if it's a red candle. You may not want to gaze at yourself in the mirror using candlelight on Halloween, but you could try gazing at the flame of a burning candle. This is a form of scrying, and throughout the ages, candles have been used to receive information about the future or any other questions you may have. Traditional Halloween candle magic also teaches that there's other ways to interpret psychic, spiritual messages by pouring the wax of a candle, preferably a white candle, into a bowl or cauldron filled with cool water. As the wax hardens and forms a shape or pattern, one could receive a message. It's similar to reading tea leaves. If a candle mysteriously goes out on Halloween, or during a seance, as though someone blew it out and no one did, it's believed that a ghost is present and likely angry or restless. In some places of England, villagers would light white candles and walk the fields and woods. If the candles went out while on this nature walk, it meant that the devil was afoot. But if they continued to burn, the villagers were free from harm of the devil and his demons. Another form of candle magic on Halloween is quite sinister. If you wish harm or death on an enemy, you could write their name on a skull-shaped candle and burn it on Halloween. If you should accidentally burn yourself from a candle or get wax on yourself during Halloween, it's also viewed as bad luck. Good news though, there's a way to reverse the bad luck. According to the book A Witch's Halloween, you can repeat the word abracadabra 9 times in this order, and it'll reverse the bad luck. Abracadabra, abracadab, abracad, abra, ab. And you thought those were just made up pretend words for kids to play with. Something to keep in mind with candle magic during Halloween is the color you choose and the shape of the candle. Candles for Halloween come in various shapes. You can find pumpkin-shaped candles, of course, but there's also witch hat candles, candles shaped like skulls, bats, skeletons, and cats, to name a few. Consider the shape you choose and why. Each shape carries symbolic meaning. Candles that are shaped around the theme of death, such as skeletons, ghosts, and skulls, can be used for calling in your ancestors. They may also be used during seances or making connections to the spirit world. Owl-shaped candles can be used to gain wisdom. Cat-shaped candles can be used with the intention to break curses, see better at night now that the season brings with it more darkness, or it can be used to tap into your psychic abilities. Bats can be used to help with sadness, grief, and depression, and some say to even promote endurance and a long life. Pumpkins are used for protection, abundance, and courage. There's so much legend and lore surrounding the fires of Samhain, and there's a lot more that can be shared. But I hope that this information is a great starting point for you to understand the significance of this element during Halloween and how you can use it. What ideas do you have conjuring up about how you can incorporate fire into your Halloween traditions?